Welcome to episode 2 of The Route, where we talk about scaling pest control companies with all the techniques, strategies, tools, anything you need to scale your business. And today, I really want to talk about something that's been on my mind from a lot of the conversations I've had with pest control owners. And I think it's a bigger issue outside of just pest control alone, but just for entrepreneurs and business owners and just people in general. One thing that they all focus on is talking about revenue, talking about how much did you make that month, or how much did your company do last year. And the number everyone brings up is revenue. And so as owners, especially smaller owners, newer owners to the game, a lot of people can get kind of bogged down or feel bad or get distracted by that number. They hear a company doing 50K a month while they're doing 10K, but in reality, that number doesn't mean a lot to me. And I've seen a lot of companies who are doing bigger numbers but aren't operating at the same rate of efficiency at smaller companies. And that can become a bigger issue as they grow. So there's companies out there that do millions and are scaling fast and using door-to-door and financing, and that's a whole different route, and they're operating at a loss every month. But for business owners who are really trying to scale and do it consistently and steadily, this episode's for you. So just to give you a kind of an example, if there are two companies side by side, company one is doing, let's say, 40K a month in revenue, but 1K in profit. Company two is doing 10K in revenue and 4K in profit. And I know companies in those exact situations. Those aren't made up numbers. I know companies doing both those. I would take company two 10 times out of 10. And on the surface, to outsiders or to newer people to the game, or even to you maybe, you might hear that and say, oh, I would much rather have 40K in revenue. Like 10 times out of 10, I want 40K in revenue and I could figure out the rest. And honestly, what happens usually is people don't even ask about the profit. So most people just hear 40K in revenue or 10K in revenue, and they're like, give me the 40K in revenue business. But that doesn't tell you much at all. There's so much more that is told from the line of profit. So I really want to break this all down and kind of restructure how we think about it, how we talk about it, and just know that if your company from day one isn't structured in a way where it's focused on profit, you are leaving so much on the table and setting yourself up to hit a ton of roadblocks on the way to your growth, if you're even able to grow. Because if you're not structured in that way, you're really setting yourself up to have a hard time growing. So let's just break it down. So revenue is what your company makes top line. They call it top line. Cash collected, payments that you receive, jobs you did. It's what comes into the business. So let's just use 20K as an example. So you made 20K in revenue. Profit is what's left over after everything. So after all the expenses are paid, let's say it's end of the month, last day of the month, and you see what's left after that, that's your profit. Now, there's two types of profit you should be tracking, and I think one is actually more important than the other. There's gross profit, and then there's net profit. Gross profit is revenue minus the cost of goods sold. And in pest control, the cost of goods sold is what it costs you to do the job. So there's 3 numbers that go into that. So just think, when you're a technician or when you go to a house, what does it cost you to do that job? It's your fuel to get there. It's the chemicals or equipment you're using. And then it's your time or your technician's time. So those are the 3 things. After you take out those expenses, that leaves you with your gross profit. And to me, that's the number one number in pest control businesses. What is your gross profit? Because those are what we call variable expenses. So the more jobs you do, the higher those numbers are going to be. Like if I do 1 job in a month, I'll have very low chemical, gas, and technician cost versus if I do 500 jobs in a month. So those are called variable expenses. All the other expenses in a business are called fixed expenses. So think of insurance, or think of your rent, or think of your utilities, or think of your phone bill, or those other expenses that you pay. It doesn't matter if you do 5 jobs or 100 services. Those will stay relatively the same. And so what's important to know is if your gross profit is too high, meaning you're spending too much on those things, the more jobs you do, the worse it's going to get. But if your gross margins are in a good range, then as you scale and as you do more jobs, you're going to continue to be in a good spot and have more margin for the rest of the business. So That's one of the first numbers I look at in any business, and that you should look at in your business, is what is your gross profit? What is it costing you to do the job? And just based on that number alone, you can know a ton of things about your business, because it should be around 75% if you have technicians. It should be around 90% if you are a solo operator. If it is not in that range, you either need to raise your prices, you either need to spend less time at houses, you either need to cut costs on chemicals, be more efficient with your routes. There's a lot of levers you can pull and things it tells you right away just with that one number. So that's gross profit, and we'll talk more about that. But net profit is what's left after all those expenses are paid. So think rent, marketing. If you have an office person or a VA you pay, again, utilities, insurance, all those expenses. After that, you're left with net profit. And that's an important number too. And most pest control businesses should be around 40% net profit. So 75% gross profit, and then all those expenses I just mentioned should be about 35% of your business. And if you think about it, if we're doing 20K in monthly revenue, 40% of that, that's pretty good margins. You're making 8K a month in profit. And that's not a made up number. That's totally doable for a pest control owner. And so if you're doing around that range and you're not bringing home 8K in profit, then you need to see where in your business are you spending too much money. So here are some common areas that I see business owners falling into that's absolutely killing their profit. So number one, let's just start at the top. It's their pricing. So if you're not charging enough, even if the rest of your business is at the right number, you're never going to have the margin to grow or the margin for the right profit. So make sure your pricing is in the right range. Number two is doing one-time jobs. So one-time jobs don't help because there's no recurring money that comes in. So you have one job you do, you make a small margin on that, and then you don't make anything else. Because most times in pest control, the money is made in the recurring service, because it's going to cost you money to get that customer or to do that first job. And then just know that your profit on each customer goes up and up and up the longer they're with you. So that's why customer retention is so important, is the longer the customer's with you, the more margin you have on that customer. Technician efficiency. If your technicians are driving too long between houses, if they're spending too long at houses, that's going to kill your profit. And then just in general, having a bad understanding of when to spend money. A lot of pest control owners become owners and they feel this sense of freedom, this sense of like opportunity and excitement, and now they're in full control of a business, and they think, or they don't think, in all reality, and they just spend, and they buy some equipment, or they hire someone, or they hire their brother, and they pay him $30 an hour, or they just start buying all these things, and they have no understanding of where their number should be at. So now that you know where those numbers should be at, 75% gross margins, 90% gross margins if you're a solo operator, and 40% profit. If you don't have those numbers dialed in right now, go into your expense tracking, QuickBooks, whatever you use, and see what you can cut out. There's almost always glaring expenses that can be cut out. So just to kind of sum up, this one was going to be quick, but I think in your business, switch your mindset to focus on profit. Because if you switch your mindset, then you're thinking of the right things, and your overall revenue is going to grow too. But now as you scale, you're going to have a profit margin that's healthy and sustainable and feeding you and growing you and your business, rather than just focus on getting tons of customers, tons of payments, and you might scale to 20, 30, 40, 50K a month. But if your margins aren't locked in and in the right spot, none of that even matters, because you're losing money every month, or you're making a super small margin and leaving so much in the bank, or sorry, on the table. It's not coming to the bank. So just make sure, raise your prices, cut costs like crazy. Do not spend on things you don't need. Focus on recurring work. Don't do one-off jobs. And then make sure you're not hiring people just to hire people. Make sure everything you do is super strategic. I would rather have a 10K a month revenue business and 4K profit than 50K and 1K. Just know that if you're making 4K in profit, after a year, that's almost 50K in profit. So just think about where your bank account's at right now. In 12 months, think if it's 50K higher. That feels pretty good. But so many owners get stuck on, well, I'd rather have a business that's growing way faster. I don't want to be just at 10K a month in revenue. Like, that sounds so small. Like, I want to grow. Like, mostly you can hit your goals and the financial freedom you want with the revenue you're already at. But it comes to having discipline, efficiency, systems in place, and focusing on the right numbers. So focus on your profit, ignore the revenue. The revenue will take care of itself if the profit is dialed in. That's a wrap for episode 2. Just want to cover that. Much more to come in future episodes, but as an owner, focus on your profit. Revenue's cool, it's flashy, but the profit is what actually matters and where your money actually comes from. So, signing off. I'll see you in the next episode.